Ask Reddit.
People that have defended your home against intruders. What is your story? When I was about 16 or so, my dad, brother and I were on the way home from church and saw that a truck we didn't recognize was parked in front of our house. We had a long driveway, so by the time we pulled up and parked, my dad had told my brother and I to stay in the car as he figured out what whoever it was wanted. When we got close enough, we noticed that the guy, a big dude in his 40s, easily 6 feet 6 inches with a giant beer belly, was hunched over by the front door. My dad is a teacher in a tiny town, so it wasn't a surprise that he recognized the guy. He called out, "Jared? Is that you?" Jared turned, didn't acknowledge my dad at all, and hustled back to the passenger side of the mysterious truck, grasping his 10-gallon hat to his head the whole time. He threw himself in head first and, his legs still dangling out the passenger door, yelled for the driver to go. They peeled out and we were left staring after them, wildly confused. We noticed later that he'd been trying to unlock the door with a screwdriver, but only succeeded in scraping up the door frame before we caught him. The best part? The door was unlocked the entire time. So was Jared a student of his at some point? He was, yeah, in one of my dad's very first classes. Also, his aunt was my dad's coworker and his grandparents live nearby. Again, small town. You're only ever about 2 degrees from Kevin Bacon there. He wasn't smart enough to drive to any other town where people might not immediately recognize him. A couple I know heard the glass on their door break and the wife ran to check it out. A guy had smashed his hand through and was trying to unlock the door. She screamed to her husband, "Get the gun." They didn't have a gun, but it scared the guy enough to run off, bleeding profusely. He ran a few doors down and asked for help. They offered to call an ambulance and he was trying to talk them out of it, so they called the police. The guy got a friend to pick him up and take him to hospital in the next city over. Doctors there knew straight away that it was the guy the police were looking for and he was arrested. When I was 17, I had a black powder rifle. I actually still have it. I was cleaning it in the basement, put it together, and took it upstairs for storage. While I was upstairs, I heard someone come in through the basement garage door. I thought it was my brother or mom coming home, but when I opened the door to the basement, I saw some random old guy coming up the steps. Edit, old in the context of how he looked to me at the age of 17. In hindsight, he was probably in his mid to late 40s, early 50s. I asked him what he wanted and he asked if I was home alone. I grabbed my rifle, empty, and pointed it at him, telling him he needs to leave the way. He came in. When he got back to the bottom of the stairs, he unlocked the door he came in through. It didn't register with me until later that he had locked the door behind him when he entered the house. "Are you home alone?" Points gun. "I will be when you get your ass out of here." Seriously though, that is terrifying. I was 12 years old hanging out with my dad watching a movie at around 1 a.m. All of a sudden there is pounding on the door. My dad gets up and twists the knob. As soon as he does, the door flies open and a mountain of a man throws the door open. My dad is pretty big himself but gets knocked to the floor but happens to grab the guy's shirt on the way down. They start wrestling and fist fighting in the entrance of our doorway. I'm standing at the top of the steps looking down and watching all of this in slow motion. My dad starts screaming to get his shotgun out of his closet. I run upstairs, grab the shotgun, run back to the top of the steps and pump around into the chamber. Immediately after hearing the sound, the guy tries to run away, but my dad holds him down on the ground. At this time my neighbors had heard the yelling and scuffle and ran over. They call the police while my dad is holding this guy against the ground, and me, a 12-year-old kid, aiming a shotgun at the back of this dude's head. The police end up coming with their guns drawn and I put the shotgun on the sidewalk. The guy ends up getting arrested and supposedly had just gotten out of jail for a strong arm robbery and battery. I can't even imagine what would have happened if I had been alone, considering my dad has worked third shift my entire life, but it just happened on one of his nights off. My dad was literally a superhero to me after that day. Edit. So to address the question of why my dad answered the door at 1 a.m. This is because we live in a pretty safe area and we have neighbors who drop by sometimes. My dad had thought maybe a neighbor was drunk and wanted to come and visit. This happens from time to time. The last thing we ever would expect is someone to try and force their way in. Another note: I don't care about the correct way to say all of a sudden. So there's that. I was home alone on a Saturday night and my roommate had left for the weekend. We often left the side door unlocked for friends who would go downstairs and crash on the couch. I would frequently hear ITS ______ as they would come in. So I am laying in bed in my birthday suit reading a book at 2 a.m. and I hear the screen door open. My dog perks up at the noise. He's a 110-pound Shepherd Newfie mix that looks like a wolf. He lets out a little boof. Leaning forward in bed, I can see the doorway. I look and see the doorknob turning. "Hello," I shout, thinking it was a friend. It was not a friend. A strange man's head poked through the door. We make eye contact. He has this weird look on his face as he proceeds into the landing. "A wrong house," I screamed, thinking he was just in the wrong home. When I screamed, my dog got up and went to my bedroom doorway. The guy stopped in his tracks. My dog's hackles raised and he started snarling. I was even scared by him a bit. The guy stopped when he saw my dog and started backing up. "Get the fuck out of my house," I screamed. My dog jumped. The guy fell backwards into the door and my dog grabbed him by the leg and shook him like a rag doll. I stopped caring about being naked at this point. I jumped out of bed and threw on my house coat while this guy was screaming bloody murder. Blood all over the floor. I grabbed my dog's back leg and sat down on the floor trying to hold onto him. The guy stumbled to his feet and grabbed the doorknob before looking back. He took a glance at me with my robe hanging open and my dog still snarling at him. "I will let him go," I screamed again. My dog jumped and I did my best to hold on, but one leg got out of my grasp and he lunged at the guy. The guy finally turned and fell out of the door. I immediately got up and locked it. There's blood all over my floor. My dog's fur is still raised as he stands at the door growling. I called the police. They came, took a statement and left. I never found out what happened to the guy. I took my dog to the vet and he was fine. I never left the side door unlocked again. I've never been so thankful for my dog. Here's Baxter the hero. My wife was at home without me. Midday, she is in the front of the house in the living room. She hears the gate to our privacy fence open and then close. She looked out the window to see a man she didn't know walking along our house through our backyard. Our dogs were both home with her. We had a boxer and a boxer Rottweiler mix. She went to the back of the house to lock the back door, but by the time she got there, the guy had already started to open the back door. She tried to push the door shut on him, but he was much bigger than she was, and he pushed his way into the house, knocking her on the floor. Both dogs jumped over her. One of them actually used her as a launching pad and broke one of her ribs and went at the guy. Both dogs connected and latched on and began to tear his arm and leg up pretty end. My wife had the wherewithal to get her phone out and call 911. The guy tried to leave and run, but our mutt, Boxer ROTTY, pulled him into the house and kept at him until the police arrived. My wife was finally able to pull both dogs off of him and get away once the cops arrived. He was charged with breaking and entering, as he had broken our gate. He spent 3 days in the hospital getting 2 surgeries to repair his arm and leg from the dog injuries. He deserved them. fuck that guy. Since that, we have always had large dogs. We now have a boxer and 2 English Mastiffs. My wife still gets edgy when home alone. Fucked up for sure. I was 14 and home alone. We were living in a crappy part of nowhere in Knoxville, Tennessee at the time. Someone drove up and knocked on our sliding glass door. I was nervous, but I stayed silent. Then they tried to force the door open, but it was held shut with a pole, so they gave up and drove away. I figured that was the end of it. Shortly thereafter, they came back. I heard the sound of someone pressing against the exterior wall. It was them cutting the phone lines to our security system and the alarm speaker. By then I was on the phone with 911 informing them what was happening. Heavy thudding started to come from the front door as someone bashed it in, breaking the deadbolt. I was terrified and pleaded with 911 to please get someone out here right away. Whoever it was must have heard me talking on the phone, because they immediately left, although the front door was broken and wide open. It took the cops another 20 minutes to arrive. The person who broke in the door must have caught himself doing it because our porch had droplets of blood on it. My dad screamed at me for not getting a license plate number while I cried. The people who broke in were never caught, and I've never felt safe anywhere since. I had nightmares for a long time. Edit. I want to say thank you to all the people who correctly pointed out that my father's an asshole. I know some people suggested that he was just reacting out of fear and that maybe he wasn't so bad otherwise. Unfortunately, no, my dad is a horrible person. He's extremely abusive and his reaction to everything is screaming. He used to have our phone line tapped just so if anyone said anything he didn't like, he could punish us later. I spent my entire childhood getting to hear about how I'm worthless and ugly and a waste of space. I moved away from him as soon as I could when I was 17. This my mother's little story of our drug-addicted neighbors, so not me. My mother heard someone walking about upstairs and immediately she takes me and my brother out and puts us in the car. I was like 3 at that. Then she goes back in, upstairs and finds the neighbor filling her pockets and generally browsing through her stuff like you would do at a mall. My mother then beats the shit out of her so badly that the junkie went to the police herself out of fear. No damage, no broken windows or doors and nothing taken obviously. Just a lesson learned. Don't break into the home of an angry mother. My mom was outside mowing in the middle of the day and I heard the phone ring. I ran downstairs to try to answer it, missed it, but then saw a tall man stand up in the back room out of the corner of my eye. I was a little kid so don't ask me what I was thinking, but I went to guide him to that front door to get out of our house. My mom walks in from that back door, the guy runs up the stairs, and she immediately can tell from the look on my face that someone is inside. She grabbed a butcher knife and began chasing him around the house. The guy must have been high. He was so scared he was begging her not to hurt him. He ended up getting away but not before my mom caught him because she was trying to hold onto him until the police arrived. Whether or not this was an attempted murder is up for debate. It was 1 a.m. and I was home from college. My brother was a senior in high school asleep in his room, my mom in her bedroom. I heard the utility door to the back of the garage struggle to slowly open, so I assumed my brother was trying to sneak out. I texted him, got no response. I then heard the door shut. I left my bedroom and went to his to see if he had left, but he was asleep in his bed. I walked up to the bed and said, "Wake up, someone is in the house." It was weird because I was the only one awake hearing these things and I didn't have much time to process it, but I just knew something was off. Then I went to my mom's bedroom and said, "Wake up, someone is in the house. Call the neighbors and 911. She freaked out, of course, and called. I grabbed a baseball bat I kept by my bed and went downstairs alone. Stupid as hell, but adrenaline I guess. I walked through our big house in the dark alone and heard tripping or shuffling coming from the room that leads to the garage. I was hitting the walls and doors yelling, "Who is there?" as I got closer, in hopes of scaring whoever it was away. Once I was about 6 to 10 feet from the room, I slammed the bat on the door to the room and yelled again for the person to leave. I heard a crash and the outside door slam. I flipped on the light and no one was there. I went back upstairs to my mom and brother. The police were on the way. When they arrived, they brought dogs and also found prying marks on the outside door. A couple blocks down the road, my addict, schizophrenic dad was arrested, leaving the direction of our house and intoxicated. He has always owned weapons and has left threatening messages for us before, but never anything like that. I have no proof it was him and no proof he was coming to kill or hurt us, but I had a gut feeling immediately something very dark was in that house.